Maseches Bava Kama. Maseches Bava Kama daf nun hey Amud beis. We are starting HaKoness Tzoin Ladir Baruch Hashem, the sixth perek of Bava Kama. And this year's Lul Nishmas of Rabi Meir Menachem ben Akiva, Sora bas Moshe, Rus bas Shalom, Le'ilu Nish, and Le'Refuah Noach Lionel ben Yulia Oria, and Yudis bas Rivka, Shmuel Avram ben Yudis. Besoich Shar Choyle Yisrael. HaKoness Tzoin Ladir. A person. This perek discusses son. Son is cattle. HaKoness Tzoin Ladir. A person brought in son, that's sheep or goats, into the deer, into the pen, into where they have to stay. V'nol b'faneo koroi, and he locked the door in front of it. Koroi. Koroi means properly, but if you remember the previous sugya, when we spoke about nol koroi, it's not the best type of shemira. It's good enough that the wind would not blow it. It's a decent shemira, but not more than decent. It's just about okay. It's not super duper. It's standard shemira. And then it says v'yotzo v'zika potu. If the animal, the sheep, the goat went out and then damaged, potu, then the person is potu. Why? Well, says Rashi, noto umay havilal mebad. He guarded it. What could he have done? In other words, I don't know if it's oiness, but he guarded it properly enough that if anything happened, then you can say it's not his fault. Good. Let's say he did not lock it properly. Went out and he was mazik, the animal damaged because it wasn't properly guarded, then the person, the owner, is chayiv. By the way, we're going to see chidushim on each line. If you're asking what's the chiddush, there are chidushim on each line over here. Nifretza balayla, it was broken into by night, yeah, or not necessarily broken into. Nifretza could be there was a breach from whichever reason, even natural reason, that there was a breach on the wall, the door broke, and that happened by night. Or shebatzua listim, or even during the day, listim, robbers, yeah, people, thieves, they came in and they broke into the pen. The yotzo ve'zika went out and was mazik, potu. The person is potu. What are these two cases of what? Of nifretza balayla. What's the chiddush of layla? Says Tosfos in the second answer, and also Tosfos Mishans, other Rishonim. By night, even if the person is opposed to by day, both night and day, if he guarded it properly and by something beyond his control, the thing broke, the lock broke, the door broke, something broke, is always potter, day or night. The reason the Mishnah mentions night is to tell me that by night, even if he knew about it, and he actually saw the animal running away, and he ran away into the darkness, and again, back then, you don't have electricity, or nowadays in a kibbutz, moshav, you don't necessarily have the electricity. It's very hard to, middle of the night, in the middle of the field, in the middle of, he doesn't have to chase it till forever. And therefore, he's potter if it went out in mazik, even if he knew about the actual escape. What's the chiddush of listim? Patsua listim. The chiddush is that he's potter, and the listim are also potter. The listim themselves, the thieves that broke into the door, maybe they have to pay for the door. But if they did not touch the animal, they're not interested in animals. They want the drugs, they want the candlesticks, they want, I don't know what they want other things. But Lamaisa, they're not interested in the sheep. Now the sheep went out by itself, and it's their indirect, action. They didn't touch it, no hands. The listim also are potu. And that will be the discussion, maybe we'll get it today, maybe tomorrow, about a good friend called Gromo. Otziu listim chayovin. If the listim took it out, even though the listim are not the owners, but the listim are the ones who actually took out and pulled it out of the pen, listim chayovin. The listim are the last people to be seen with that. I'm speaking very balabatish, there are really other reasons, but the listim are the last people who actually got it out of its domain, of its place. The listim from now on, they are the ones chayav, they are the ones liable to any nezik done by the animal. Okay? Enicho ba chama. Let's say the person locked it properly, not super properly, but standard, karoi. But it was a hot day. It did not offer any shade to the animal. Yeah, there was no awning, no tarp, nothing on top of the animal. The animal is now suffering in the heat. Alternatively, or he gave it to cher shete v'koton to look after, and they're incapable. And the animal went out and was mazik his chayiv. What's the chiddush about nicha b'chama? Nicha b'chama means that even though it was locked okay, it was standardly okay, looked after, but because it's so hot inside, the animal is surely going to run away. Because the animal is so pressurized by the heat, the animal is going to run away because it's too hot for it. And Mimela, it's not called that you were properly shemira the animal, because good shemira with heat all over the head is not good shemira. The animal is going to run away. Next case, let's say this person gave it to let's say the person is a shomer, and he gave it to a shepherd to look after, and then something happened. Nichnas haroye tachtov. Nichnas haroye tachtov. What does that mean? The roye, the second shepherd, now becomes liable to anything that happens to the animal. What exactly is the story over here? I don't know if you remember Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, but if you have a good memory, Baruch das Chazoras, very good. Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, it says roye shomer shemosol l'shomer. Shomer shemosol l'shomer, famous sugya, Yud Aleph Amud Beis, and other places. Let's say I gave you my $1 million, few million, 10 million to guard, yeah, and you gave them to someone else without my knowledge, without my agreement, without my knowledge, without my consent. You gave them to somebody else. There was a machloikes between some Dormem and Rove. And Rove says, Shomer shemosol l'shomer, the first one is chayav if anything happens. Why? I gave them to you, not to the other one. And even if you upgraded and you're shomer chinam and the other one is shomer sacho, still we say, I can say, as the owner of the $1 million, I can say, I gave you the money to look after, not the other person, because I trust you more than I trust him. Maybe he's going to lie to me when it comes to Shavua, when it comes to the tricky, sticky parts. And usually with Pascal Lakrove, Shomer, Shmosol, Shomer, what do we say? The first one is going to be chayiv, not the second one. Maybe the second one will have to pay the first one, but the one will have to stand next to me, not next to me, will have to face me in court. Yeah, Chalila is who? Is the first shomer. You're the one that I'm relying on. However, we did see before, and soon we're going to get back to our Mishnah. What happens if the person I gave him, I don't know, some candlesticks to look after, and the person has a wife who's a reliable person, and he has some teenage children who are reliable. That's an oxymoron. Yeah, he has I don't know, above 20s who are reliable. And then what happens? Then something was stolen, and he gave them to his wife to look after. That's okay. Why is that okay? Because says the shomer to the owner. What do you mean? When you deposit something in my house, I don't stay home 24/7. I always leave the house under the care of my wife or my children, or I don't know, anybody who's in the house, right? Mainly, if it's normally done, that the first shomer always gives to the other shomer, and that's the way it works, or as it happens in agencies. It's an agency of shemira. The head of the agency, super duper uber shomer, he's not the one who's shomer everything. He's an agency, and he gives it over, right, to others, yeah, by commission, whatever. He gives it over to other people. That's the way it's done. Oh, that's the story over here. Let's read again. If the great shepherd, the main shepherd, was supposed to look after the animal, and he gave it to a smaller, to more minor shepherd, another one of his workers, yeah, or somebody who works by, I don't know, retain something, nichnas haroye tachtov. Then the second roya is chayiv, not the first one. Why? You can't tell the main roya, why did you give it to the smaller roya? Why did you give it to your, what do you mean? That's the way it works. That's how shepherd.com works. The main shepherd gets the sheep. He doesn't look after all of them. You should know it's a known thing that I give it to the less important, to the secondary shepherds, and that's the way it's done. And Mimela, in such a case, we don't say that the first one is chayiv. The second one who actually flunked, the second one who's actually the one who messed up, he's the one who has to pay. No flow. That's the end of the first part of the Mishnah. Comes now the second part. The second part of the Mishnah, which in the Mishnah is a completely new Mishnah. Noflo lagina. Let's say one's animal fell into someone's garden. The oines. Nofla means there was one level or another. The Gemara says of oines, the animal slipped, the animal was pushed by another animal, the animal was walking down the road, and let's say the road is high, it's a mountainous area, and he was somewhat pushed into someone's garden, was way below. Baruch Hashem. Oh, that gina was full of lush fruit. Yeah, it was lush, full of fruit. And those fruits, they cushioned the blow. Very nice. But now comes the gina owner and says, you got to pay me. You got to pay me. Why? Because even though it was oines, and I sympathize with oines, and usually potter and oines, lemaisa, I saved your animal. Yeah, you used my money, my fancy exotic fruit, let's say they grow over there, and you used my money to save your animal. So I gave you a gift, Kilo, without wanting to. So I'm not claiming you're a mazik, but I'm claiming because it's oines. But I do claim that I'm the one who now, bizchus me, and my fancy, whatever that is, papayas, whatever, bizchus that, your animal is alive because it took the blow. I'm just giving one example of many of the Gemara. It's a big sugya later on, and I would not welcome questions now for the simple reason that all this will be discussed later. Maybe at the end of the Mishnah, you can ask technical questions. Nafla lagina. Benehenes, it enjoyed. Enjoyed doesn't mean it had fun. Let's take the first case of the Gemara. Nehenes means it benefited. Benefited is a better word in English. Benefited from the fact that those papayas, whatever, those star fruit, they actually cushioned the blow. How much does the cow owner have to pay the field owner? It does not have to pay the entire price of the. I'm choosing, by the way, fruit which I think are expensive. I don't know, some kind of exotic fruit, which is, I'm just giving the sabas oizen. The field owner comes and tells the cow owner, oh, your cow fell and boom and thud, boom, on my super fancy, let's say it was a keren, grapes. Some grapes in this country are very expensive that I know, yeah, whatever. My super duper Kali grapes, very fancy. And now they're crushed. Pay me for the entire bunch of grapes that took the blow, and it's very expensive. Says Mishnah, no, you don't have to pay what you damaged. You have to pay mashenenes. In other words, in order to take the blow, to cushion the blow, you don't need fancy grapes. Even rotten tomatoes would do. Even an old mattress. Okay, that's really a different thing. Yeah. In other words, even if those things were cheaper, much cheaper, the blow would have been taken. Yeah, it would have been avoided just as much. So Lamaisa, what my animal got and benefited from you is not the fancy papaya or fancy grapes, is even the cheap tomatoes. And therefore, that's what he has to pay. He has to pay, again, I don't know exactly, the same kind of fruit, different kind of fruit, but Lamaisa, we're going to discuss it later, but it's the lower end of the scale, because he says, I didn't get anything from the fact that you got super fancy Chardonnay, whatever grapes. That didn't help me. All I needed was to cushion the blow. And Mimela, I don't have to pay you more than that. The actual price, I have to pay you less than that. However much less will be discussed. Yodo kida, but that's all because it's oines. So when I say oines, you only have to pay for what you got. You got a gift, even though it's oines. I'm not coming to you because you're mazik. I understand you're not a mazik. Lamaisa, your cow is alive and kicking, bizchus me, so pay me. Now, yodo kidalko, comes another case. Let's say the animal gingerly, nonchalantly walked down the path. Kidalko, no problem. Bezika, and then it started, let's say, eating, and that is wrong because the owner should have known that. That's classical case of shen. A shen ezach. This is shen, right? In other words, the animal is eating from someone else's field. That's kitadalid stuff. Of course, the animal has to pay. Mishalemis mashezika. Then it has to pay fancy papayas, fancy tali grapes. It has to pay good things. That's what you ate, lady cow. You ate that. You got to pay that. And however, here again there is a limitation. How do you calculate the payment that it has to pay? Let's say it ate an entire, I don't know, got a good supper there. It had, I don't know, 2 meters by 2 meters of grapes, let's say, and the animal ate all of them. Yeah, yeah, 2 by 2 meters of whatever the animal ate. Now, that person has acres and acres of grapes. Yeah, the guy's a big, what a vineyard guy. So now, how do you gauge the payment? How do you assess it? Shamin base seo be'oisa sode, you take a base saw. Base saw is 60 times more, even though it sounds like it's a set number, but it's not. We'll see later on in the Mishnah. You take the 2 meters by 2 meters and you multiply them by 60 or by another 59. Which means, let's say that person has a field which is much, much bigger. Yeah, there could be other cases. The person has acres of grapes. 2 meters by 2 meters is tiny comparing to the entire amount of vineyards that he has. So now there are 3 ways how we can assess the damage. You can focus the camera, zoom only on the 2 meters by 2 meters grapes, and they contain, I don't know, 500 kilos, I don't know how much, of grapes, yeah? And say, oh, how much do 500 kilos of grapes cost? Focus, zoom just on them, that's a lot of money. They cost a lot of money, 500 kilos of those fancy grapes. Now, if you look at the entire fields of the person, and there are many, and you say, how much would he sell that field on? How much would he pay the entire property with the 2 meters or without the 2 meters? It's much, much less, right? We all know. Let me ask you a question. 2,000 shekels, is that a lot of money or a small amount of money? Stupid question. If, I don't know, you come home, your wife tells you she bought some one dish for 2,000 shekels, not shalom bayis. Yeah, 2,000 shekels for a small thing, that's not shalom bayis promoter. But let's say 2,000 shekels, darling, dear, honey, whatever you call her, 2,000 shekels for that thing? No way. It should be 100 shekels. Now, let me ask you a question. You buy an apartment in the Shemesh, a nice 2.5 million, not science fiction, and there's a question of something there to do 2,000 shekels. Add or subtract, I don't know, some tiny issue. You say, come on. And most people, I'm already paying 2.5 million. I took 2 mashkantas and said, I sold my house in America. 2,000 shekels extra, beseder, darling, we'll have that extra feature. 2,000 is not a lot of money. Oh, so we all know the money is very relative to its surroundings, to the ratio. Same thing over here. If you'd go and you only pay for the grapes themselves as if they're not being sold in the market, that's a lot of money. If you look at the field, the big one, the Zoom people can't see my hands, the very, very big field, and it's with or without that 2 by 2 meters, it's almost insignificant, much less money, but he has to pay. The one who damaged the 2 by 2 with his cow. What we say, says the Meiri, it's really the Gemara, the Meiri explains, he says you go for the middle. You take that aruga of 2 meters by 2 meters, and you say we gauge it as part of 60, like bottle b'shishim. In other words, we take, the camera zooms not all the way out, not all the way in. It stops somewhere in the middle, the frame of the halachic camera, and we say, we'll look at the surroundings and that 2 by 2 meters of grapes, the 500 kilos, are part of 60. How much would you pay for that, whatever, 2 by 2 by 60 is how much? Is 120 times, whatever. 120 by 120, how much would that be with or without the 2 by 2 meters? Oh, so it's not the lowest price and it's not the highest price. It's somewhere in the middle. We don't want the mazik to suffer too much and not the nizik to suffer too much. Says the Meiri, I didn't see the Gemara that well from later on, but the Meiri says over here, because why 60? Because that's the shiur that we like in halacha. Everybody knows echad b'shishim. I spoke to somebody almost chiloni, chad b'shishim he knows, yeah? In other words, yeah, that's a shiur of bottle b'shishim, yeah? And therefore, that's how we follow here too. Again, further questions, it's going to be a very big sugya later on. This is just the Mishnah, which is a taste of what we're going to see. Rabbi Shimon partially argues on what we said, and he qualifies what we just said. He says if the fruit was already ripe, super ripe, and ready to be picked, ready, mamish ripe, then it has to pay peros gmurim, complete fruit. In other words, then it has to pay the expensive way, the expensive end of the stick. It has to pay as if they were sold in the market. Im seo, im satam. You ate a saw, you have to pay saw. You ate satam, you have to pay 2 seos. Why? Because the reason why we gauge it according to the field, why aren't we harsh with the mazik and say, hey, pay for you ate 2 by 2 meters, 500 kilos of fancy grapes in Osher Ad or in, I don't know, Yesh, the cost that, pay me that. The reason why we don't say that, because it says, Ubir bisde acher. The pasuk that talks about shen regel is bir b'sdeh acher. Sdeh acher is Rames. The Gemara says, shomin oiso al gav sodeh acheres. The payment has to be sdeh. You don't have to pay for the fruit themselves that you ate. You have to pay for them as part of a sadeh. You have to look at the big picture. You have more bread kite. Look at the whole picture of the sadeh and see how much did it damage the sadeh, not just the actual fruit. Says Rab Shimon, that's very nice when it's part of the sadeh. But when it's about to be picked and it doesn't need the ground anymore, the tree anymore, just a matter of minutes or hours or days until it's picked and it's ki'ilu already in Osharad, then we say it's considered as a separate unit. And we don't look at it as part of the field that damaged the field and all big picture of 60. According to Bishim, then we look at the fruit as of themselves, by themselves, and you have to pay the higher price. Okay? That's the Mishnah. I welcome technical questions just to the point, not what if and what would be, because this, we have a Gemara for that. So if you have any technical questions, something you didn't understand in the Mishnah, you're welcome to ask now. Otherwise, please don't. Yes. Before we continue, sorry? Yeah. 100%, yeah. You see how much I appreciate you. Svi sent me yesterday a very nice email that we saw yesterday about the Dirbers Rishonos and Achronos, the first tablets and the second tablet. We see what? We see the difference. There are 17 words or letters. 17 words extra in the second ones, right?
Yeah.
So that's very nice because we saw the word tov is what the Gemara talks about. Unbelievable. Wow, that's a wow. The word tov, the idea tov is mentioned in the second one, it's not the first ones. And also the difference in words is 17 tov. Thank you very much. Which website was that from? From Shiur. Oh wow, very nice. Shiur, Givaldi. Says the Gemara.
Extending that one, when you compare the two.
Okay, Tonu Rabbanon. Says the Gemara, Tonu Rabbanon. The Rabbanon tell us, Ezu karoi, vezu shlo karoi. You said in the Mishnah that if you lock the sheep in the pan properly, then fine, otherwise no. What do you call karoi? What's called properly? What's the standard? Answers the Gemara. A door that can actually withstand, can survive regular wind, that's roi, that's good. Of course, there's a lock, but yeah, the door is properly closed and a regular wind and a regular windy day will not break the door, open the door. That's good. If it's a door that would not stand regular wind, in the windy day, the door would open wide or break, whatever, something would happen with regular wind, that's not called proper. So Lamaisa, this is not the best shemira, because sometimes you have hurricanes, sometimes you have stronger wind or something, an animal can get violent or too smart, I don't know, to open it. In other words, this is like good standard. It's not gold standard, it's an okay standard door, and that's, according to the Mishnah, good enough. Okay. Omar Mani Bar Patish, okay, so it's fine, standard. Omar Mani Bar Patish, Man Tana Muad Desagil B'Shmira Pchusa. Ooh, who's the one from previous knowledge that we have, who's the Tana that believes that for Mu'ad, Shmira Pchusa is good enough? Because this is Shmira Pchusa. This is inferior, not super inferior, it's inferior as mediocre. That's how I would call it, yeah? Who's the one that says that from Mu'ad, it's good enough? Here we have a whole issue. If you noticed, and I remember you did yesterday, from what I understood from you, all of a sudden we changed from the bull and the ox, refreshing change. We talk about son. Son is usually, and also in the Torah and in reality, son usually are not as wild as the show. Sometimes goats can get also wild, but normally son is more docile and quiet and nice. So HaKoness son ladir, what kind of nezek is much more common to be done by the son? Shen and regel, very good. Shen regel. Shen regel, is there a concept called tam and muad by shen regel? No, obviously not. Yeah, you represent everybody here. Yeah, no. Why? Because there's no tam by shen regel. So the kids are good. Okay. So Mimela, once we have a Mishnah here that talks about son, the assumption is son automatically, we connect automatically, the connotation is shen v'regel. Shen v'regel is muad. Okay, fine. It's muad. Not muad is crazy 3 times. Muad means normal, that normal behavior. Show muad, unfortunately, became so off the derech that he's already used to the bad way, it became his nature. Yeah, Mashenken, the son, by them, obviously, shen regel is muad, it's normal. And yet we see that even though it's normal behavior for the animal to walk out and start eating and walking into someone else's field, we see the shemira pchusa is good enough. Fine. Who is the one who says that? Says Salman bar Patish, Rabbi Yehuda, it's only Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is the only opinion out of 3 opinions which we've met previously that believes that for muad, regular standard shemira is good enough. Detnan. If you don't know what we're talking about, here the Gemara tells you everything on the silver platter. Detnan. Kosher ba'olav b'mosero. There we're talking about a shor muad, or tam, by the way. What shor? The issue there is shor. It's a Mishnah that we've seen in where is it? Nun. Where was it? Nun Aleph. Nun. Memei. Sorry, Memei Amud base. Kosher ba'olav b'mosero. The owner tied it with mosera, like a muzzle or something in the mouth. Yeah, a bit. Yeah. What? Rain is moshcha. Okay. He tied it with the rain. V'na lefon of koroi, and he locked him properly, not super properly, but standardly. Okay. The yotze v'hizik went out and was mazik the show. Echad tam ve'echad muad chayev divrei Rabi Meir. Even if it's tam, or even and kol sheken muad is chayev, says Rabi Meir, which means Rabi Meir says that if you did proper shmira but not super proper, if you did shmira which is an okay standard shmira but not above that, you're chayev for both tam and muad. Now over there we talk about show muad. Here it's a tzon muad, but muad is muad, right? And therefore, at the end of the day, Rabi Meir lichoira would not agree to our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says, you can even see in the words, it's mamish stira between Rabi Meir and us. Go back to the Mishnah. It says, no b'fnei koroi, ta potu. And here it says the same words, no lefon of koroi, ta chayev. Wow. It's mamish against Rabi Meir. Here, right? Here we say that, here we say, koroi, whatever that means, that standard mediocre shmira in our Mishnah is good and nice. In Rabi Meir, he says both tam and muad, it's not good enough. Okay, so our Mishnah is not Rabi Meir. Nobody died from that. We have Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is our friend. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, that was the kivyochol strangely expressed for Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, tam chayev muad potu. Remember that? Ooh, everyone went crazy. At tam, if it's a show tam, then and you locked it in a standard way and you went out, you're chayev. If it's muad, you're potu. Wow, how come muad is less than tam? Shenema v'lo yishmerenu be'olov v'shomer hu zeh. V'lo yishmerenu be'olov means the baalim should not guard him, and this one is guarded. In other words, when it comes to show muad, there's an extra pasuk to tell me that as long as there is any kind of shmir, it's good enough. You remember the answer to the question? Remember, we asked how come tam is more severe than muad? Crazy. What was the answer? We said every muad has 2 parts. The tam remains tam for life. After the 3rd time, there's an extra half that jumps the top of that. Yeah? Accumulative. It's not exactly cumulative. No. The 3 times are tam, tam, tam. Once it becomes muad, it has a tam half and a muad half. So when we say you're potter and muad, doesn't mean you're completely potter and a crazy bull. It means you don't have to pay the extra half. That extra half of muadus, you don't have to pay if you guarded it properly, standardly, mediocrely. The mediocre shmira is not good for tam. For muad, it's okay, means you don't have to pay that extra muad for that. But the Meister Rabbi Yehuda believes that muad, in our case, muad doesn't have 2 halves. It's actually good that I'm mentioning it. I'm not just making a trivia question here. According to Rabbi Yehuda, here, that animal, the sheep that goes for the first time or any time to graze, that's muad. There are no 2 halves. And what does Rabbi Yehuda say? That for muad we say, potu, it's good enough. At the end of the day, muad, whichever way you look at muad, when you have standard middle of the way mediocre shmira, for Rabbi Yehuda, it's good enough. You don't have the 2 halves over here. It's 1. So muad is fine. Mitzad the psukim. Here we don't have to start, twisting things around. Muad, it's good enough for muad, and by the sheep to walk and eat is muad normal. No problem. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he's the master of our Mishnah. He's the one who says for muad, like the sheep walking and eating, it's good enough to have the standard shmira. Ablezer Omer, eno shmira lesakin. Ablezer, who speaks about show muad, obviously not about the sheep. Rabbi Lezer says the muad of a show. I've had enough. Rabbi Lezer is the menahelet of the school. That's it. 3 times out of the school. Boom. That's it. Gamarnu. Yeah. 3 times shechtit. Gamarnu. 3 times. Yeah. Shecht. No other way. You didn't shecht it. You got to pay. Meaning, even if you're shomerit with 10 locks and 2 safes and brinks, everything is guarding the shor. Lo chpatli. Rabbi Lezer says no shmir is good enough for shor muad. Rabbi Lezer is out of the picture by us because obviously over here we're comparing it to a sheep. Obviously, a sheep and goat who walk to the street innocently, you're not going to shecht them. Yeah, unless you want to have a nice Chanukah meal. Yeah, but that's you have to eat milky. So, but the question is, do we really say that our Mishnah only follows Rabbi Yehuda and not Rabi Meir? Seemingly, yes, and it's okay. But says the Gemara, no. The Gemara wants not to include Rabi Meir. Says the Gemara, no. Afilu tema Rabi Meir. Even if you say that our Mishnah follows Rabi Meir, it still would work. Our Mishnah can work according to Rabi Meir. Why? Shiny shen regel dater miyoto b'shmiroson. As I'm sure you all understand, before we even go to the sources, even balabatishly speaking, there's a difference between shor muad, 3 times, he's a criminal with a record in the police, to the muad of the sheep who wants to walk, who wants to eat, right? It's not the same thing. It's true that both are muad in the sense that they have to pay how much? There's a ksholem, full nezik. But their behavior is not the same. And the Torah backs that, which means the same Rabi Meir that told you that for shor muad, you cannot, the shemira, mediocre shemira, that shemira that we talk about is what? Is shemira pchusa, is not good enough. That's by the bull, by the keren, by the violent behavior. But when it comes to eating and walking, there the Torah is miyata b'shmiroson. The Torah supports the svara that there you need less shemira. There, even Rabi Meir would agree that by tzon, in the deer was about to walk, or even for animals, even for a cow, even for a bull. The bull that just wants to walk or to eat is not as wild, it's not a meshugana, and therefore the shemira, the standard shemira, the low-profile shemira, is good enough in this case, even according to Rabi Meir. And your comparison between shor muad and shen regel muad, not the same, not the right comparison. That's a crazy one, and that's regular behaving behemoth. And we support that. Because Oblozo says the Amril b'masnisa, and some say that the Brisa says, it says in the Brisa, Arba dvorim, there are 4 types of nezikin. There are 4 types of nezikin out of, there are really 6 types of nezikin, not 4, yeah, because we also have a person and the shor has 3. So there are 4 types of nezikin that the Torah miyato b'shmiroson. The Torah requires only lesser quality, lower standard shmira, and that's good enough. What are those 4 things? By the way, excluding who? Excluding keren and excluding odom. Let's first start. Belen. These are the 4 things where mediocre, regular, standard shmira is good enough. Bo, beish. I don't have to translate. Shen, regel. These are 4 obvious nezikin. Who are the 2 missing? Adam and Karen. Yeah, Adam and Karen, which means what? It sounds like a couple, yeah. Adam and Karen, what do we say? And Adam od lo'olam. Karen, Karen, no. Karen says Rabi Meir, start. But against the bull who wants to start goring and go meshugane, got to guard him super duper well. And you as a person, we expect a lot of you. You're tzelem elokim. But those 4 that are the bo, esh, shen, regel, that are regular things, those things the Torah does not require super duper shmira. It's enough to have the standard one. Bo, let's see the source. These are all very nice volas, but we need sources for that. You can't just go with your own ideas all the time. Let's count them as they come along. Bo, dichtiv, ki yiftach ish bo, or ki yichre ish bo. If a man opens the bow or he digs the bow, and he does not cover it, what's his big crime? Didn't cover it. Ha-kisau, end of posuk. So now we're deriving from the posuk, ha-kisau, potu. We see that if you covered it, that's good enough. Covering, even with the best cover the money can buy, is not the best way. What's the best way? Very good, beautiful. Fill it in. We see that because cover, you can always somehow move, somebody will move it. There are worms, there are swarms. And here we see that we don't require to fill in. To cover properly, good standard cover is good enough. So you see by bow, you don't have to go crazy with shemira. Standard shemira is good enough. Next one, next please, esh. How do you know that esh also, it's enough to have standard shemira? Dichtiv. It says about esh, shalem yeshalem, he should surely pay hamavir esa be'ero, the one who ignites fire. That's not exactly the story. Hamavir esa be'era, the story of esh, if you remember, is not only a person who actually sets fire onto his friend's field, that would even be, by the way, Odom, but what's fire? What's the case of fire? Oh, I had a nice barbecue in my backyard. Not Yom Ha'atzmaut, another day, whatever. Yeah, I had a backyard. I just had regular, innocent, nice little bonfire. Yeah, and it was just uncareful, irresponsible, and it started traveling into my friend's field, and I'm like, oh, so sorry. I'm so sorry. You're sorry, but you were irresponsible. So it's not like you ignited on purpose. You were just negligent. However, the pasuk does say the words mavir as if ignited viciously. Why? Says the Gemara, ad the Ovid ke'ein mavir. His level of negligence has to be similar to the one who Ki'ilu did it b'mezid, which means that your standard way of guarding the Eish, by the way, the whole sugi of Eish we're going to see later on in this perek, but your standard shemira of Eish is good enough. Only if you're so negligent that you are similar, you're closer in the scale to doing it by a dime, that you're chayav on. But if you guarded it in an okay way, you guarded it fine, then what? Then we say, then it's okay, right? Only if you're super negligent, you're not okay. If you're standard middle of the road shemira for the Eish, it's good enough, yeah? Because you're not similar to mamish by a dime. Can it wait till the two more of us? Do you mind? Yeah, I'll promise you I'll answer. Shen, the third one, it's not long. Shen, how do you know shen is standard shemira is good enough as locking the door normally, and then the animal went out and ate and then potter? Dichtiv. What's beer again? Beer, ikilu, you led the animal to the field, and it's not the case. But it says, ad ovid ke'enu beer. As long as your negligence was so bad, such terrible negligence, that it's very similar to leading the animal to the place. You had a lousy door. You had the door that even regular wind can open in this. It's a joke of a door. It's ke'ilu, you invited the animal to go to Yenna's field. That you chayav on. Mashma, that if it's standard shemira, then it's good enough. Regel, last but not least, v'shilach. What's v'shilach? He sent his animals. That's not true. We learned earlier, it's not that even if I sent it and said, hey, horse whisperer, you know, horse whisperers, yeah, the cow whisperer, go ahead, go. Go eat Shimon's field. I hate him. That's not the case. Why does it say v'shilach? I sent it on purpose. Ad ovid ke'en v'shilach. Ad ovid ke'en v'shilach, which means if your negligence was so terrible, you were sipping your coffee, watching your animal walking by, or you did shemira, what did you do? You had some lousy kind of shemira that every wind can open, and you're very negligent. That's similar, ke'ilu, you told your animal to go. That you chayav on. But as long as you had sort of middle of the road responsible shemira, it's good enough. So see it by all four. Betania, 1 second. No, I'll hear your question. Yes. I'm listening to every word you say. And it says in the pasuk, "Kasher yivayir hagolol ad tumoi." How do you know that bi'er means shen? That's good chazor in the first perek. Yivayir hagolol ad tumoi. Remember what's golol? Golol is megule. It's the tooth. The tooth sometimes is revealed, sometimes covered, right? It's a body part which naturally nothing to do with our clothes. Sometimes covered, sometimes not. Naturally, you smile, you talk, you show your teeth. So then, hagolol yivayir will eat, will consume ad tumoi. David came the shilach ubir. Only if your shemira was so bad, it's similar to sending or to making it eat. Aloy ovid loy. Otherwise, no. As long as you did standard shemira, it's good enough. Omar Rabbi. Rabbi wants to add and support what we just said. Our Mishnah also is meduyal, like you're saying. Let's just remember, basically what we had today in the Gemara is one question and one answer. That's all we had with everything around it. Let's repeat. Let's review what we did today till now. We wanted to suggest that our Mishnah, you tell me now, yeah, let's have a give and take. Our Mishnah says that standard middle of the road shemira. Good enough or not good enough? Good enough. Says the Gemara, Opa, the Gemara's ears are perked. Oh, that's against Rabi Meir. Because in our Mishnah, it's a muad. It's muad, regular behavior. Rabi Meir says for muad, it's not enough to have standard shemira. Rabi Meir requires the golden club, the diamond club kind of shemira, right? Answers the Gemara, no. There's muad and there's muad. By muad of keren. Keren, hoi vavoy. Keren is always the bad girl or the bad boy in the story, right? Keren is violent, his behavior is crazy, it's not normal. For keren, you need super duper shemira. And so too for Odom. But for shen regel and esh v'bo, and I stress shen regel, even Rabi Meir would agree that these are more normal kinds of behavior. For their shmira pchusa is good enough. Okay, that's what we say. That's all we said. Now, Omar Rabbi says Rabbi, Rabbi wants to support what we just said and say that our Mishnah is also meduyak. Our Mishnah is also hinting to the same idea. Biktani son. As I asked you before, son, that's refreshing change. All of a sudden, our Mishnah talks about son, about sheep and goats. Last time I checked, what's the logo of the Shiur in the internet? Oh, yeah. Up until now, from the beginning till now, the star of the show was a shore. And all the time, speak show. Nitni show. Let's continue to talk about shore. Be consistent. Why all of a sudden we changed it to son? Why did the Mishnah speak about son? Because the same story could have continued the show, right? I can speak about a show that goes and gores, v'chule, shemira, it fell, this and that. Lav mishum must be why. That Torah miyata b'shmiroson. You know why? Because son is not connected to keren. Son is naturally connected in the Torah and in our minds to shen regel. Son, the sheep, a shepsele, right? When you say about somebody a shepsele, it's a tmimis dikigai, it's the baby. Shepsele is cute. We move to the cute ones because we move away from keren. We talk about shen regel. Aha, because shen regel, for them, the lower shemira is good enough. And why is that? We continue. Lav mishum dekan, keren, or there's a girsa son, not kan, but son. There's a girsa in the Gemara. The son, keren lo ksiva bei. About son, it doesn't say keren in the Torah. It says ki yigach shor, shor bekeren. Shen regel udechsiv bei. Yeah, the shilach is beiroi. These are son. Without what shilach? They eat and they walk. We precisely, Davka wanted particularly to move to tzon just to make sure that you understand we talk about shen regel. Why do you want to talk about shen regel? Because we want to tell you exactly what the answer said, that for shen regel, low, middle of the road, standard, not amazing shmira, for shen regel it's good enough. So the Mishnah hinted to it by moving into tzon, because tzon, you're not connected to keren. They're automatically connected in our minds and in the Torah's mind to shen regel. Shen regel, everyone agrees, even Rabi Meir, that middle of the road shmir is good enough. Nice, good. Everybody happy? Yeah. Questions and comments? Yes, I'm listening. In response to your question, I'm not saying that S doesn't have keren. Sometimes, what's the name? Goats can get quite wild. If its son behaves out of line and starts kicking and biting, of course it's keren. But the way the Torah describes show is the Torah connects show with keren and son with shen regel. Mimela, when the Mishnah speaks about son, the Mishnah, who's meant for people who want to learn Baal Peh, right? The Mishnah speaks about son, so you automatically make a switch in your mind. The picture you have in your mind of son is shen regel and not keren, because keren is rare by son. Why do we talk about shen regel? Tell me the halachic chidush that for shen regel, shmir plus is good enough. Okay. Urcha de milsa, that's a nice word. More common. Did you? Very good. Yes. Mm-hmm. Tanya. Yeah. Let's go. Amar bi Yeshua. Now, with the first wide line. Tanya, Braisa. Amar bi Yeshua. Arba dvorim. There are four things that four bad things. Nezikin. Potum midine Adam. V'chai b'dine Shamayim. A person who does them is potum midine Adam. Beis din cannot make him pay, but chai b'dinei shamayim. Chai b'dinei Shamayim means two things. It means that when it comes to Shamayim, won't be very nice. But practically speaking, if the person is Yireh Shamayim and does teshuvah, he has to pay. In other words, Beis Din won't force you, but if you ask your rabbi and the rabbi knows what he's saying, obviously, then the person has to pay. Chai b'dinei Shamayim. You got to pay because in Shamayim's bank account and Beis Din, you got to pay. Beiluhen, what are those four things? They're all indirect nezikin. Number one, and each one will be detailed later on. Number one, remember the thieves from the Mishnah? Yeah, I don't know what they're looking for. They opened the door in front of the behema of the friend. Now they let it free. What do you mean let it free? They didn't touch it. They just opened the door and the sheep can do whatever he wants. Obviously, the sheep will most probably walk out and eat someone else's grapes. While the person opened the door, he smashed the door. Now the animal can walk, so indirectly the animal is walking because he gave her the freedom. So he's not touching the behema. He's a very smart guy, very sly. He's no hands criminal, white collar. And Mimela is potter b'dinei odom, but chai b'dinei shamayim. Then the next one, the koifer kamoso shel chaver b'fnei adleika. Let's say somebody watches the fire as it spreads along and is about to consume. Someone is about to enter, so to speak, someone else's field. He doesn't like the field owner. He's not the one starting the fire. He's again the white collar, nice guy from the corner. He's a sly guy. And he watches the fire coming towards the field of his enemy. And he says, but the fire is not really getting to the right place. So he's bending the kamosa, he's bending the wheat, the barley, the stalks. Yeah. He's bending them towards the fire. Maybe he's even tying them and then he goes. But he positioned the wheat, the barley in such a way that when the fire comes, he will consume it. Without his intervention, the fire would have gone there. There wouldn't be a collision. But now he put them in such a place that the fire would actually consume them. But he's like saying, I didn't burn it. It's the fire burned it. Yeah, but you really caused it to be there when the fire comes. A lot of questions were asked about it, why it's indirect, yes, direct. For now, let's just accept it for now. It will be discussed that this is not direct nezek. He didn't burn it by a dime. Yeah, he bent it, went back, and then the fire ate it. Obviously, it's his fault. And the guy, no shidduch from my daughter. And also, B'dinei Shamayim is chayv, but B'dinei Adam is potter because he didn't actually do a direct hands-on ma'aseh b'yadayim. Now, case number 3. These are all very nice people here, yeah? Such a nice man. He is hiring false witnesses to give witness. Yeah, he wants to say that somebody owes $1 million. So he gets the best AD money can buy. He pays them good money and he trains them. They have a whole show and they come to Beis Din. They sound very reliable. And those ADM are saying that Reuven owes $1 million and he wins the case. Great victory. So this person is not chai b'dinei odom because he didn't do anything physical. He's telling them he's soicher. He's a mafioso. Sits in his office in Manhattan. He manages things behind the scenes. He didn't do anything b'yadayim. So he's potter from actually paying the $1 million that the other guy lost. But b'dinei shamayim, I don't think Hakadosh Baruch Hu is exactly in love with the guy, or not with his ma'asim at least, and therefore he's chai b'dinei shamayim. And the fourth, last but not least, a person who knows an edus, a person who saw that that car actually smashed your car, but he's too scared of the car owner, the one who smashed, and therefore he's not going to Beis Din. That's science fiction. Yeah, he's not going to Beis Din or to wherever to testify that that guy was his fault and he smashed your car, and now you're losing. So Lamaisa, there's a monetary loss because of his passiveness. He's being passive and not going to Beis Din to testify, but he's not doing anything b'yadayim, so he's not chayiv. I'm sure there are a million questions in all these cases. The first question came to my mind. I'm also allowed questions sometimes, no? Yeah, question. Yeah, yes, Akiva, what do you want? No, quick, North Korea. So now, my question is 4 things. We've been seeing Groma all along. Groma has been our good friend since time immemorial. 4 things. I would count many more. Any action which is indirect, right, is Groma. So it's chai b'dinei shamayim, potter b'dinei adam. And here we say 4 things only. I was happy to see that the Gemara later on asked the question. I don't know the answer, but I peeked later on, and the Gemara asked the question. Yes, yeah. There's time for questions. Yeah, it's nice symmetry. I appreciate the symmetry, but is that so? Nice. Peretz is saying. Peretz is like mathematically oriented. Very good, more than me for sure. And he said there are 4 obviously Nezikin we have to pay. There are 4 that you don't have to pay. It's 4 keneged 4. Keneged arba Nezikin divrei Torah. That's nice, but I'm still asking the question many more. So these are the 4 prototypes. Maybe that's a pretty good answer. Maybe you're saying maybe these are the 4 prototypes, the 4 titles. Maybe that's a pretty good answer. Didn't check it. Let's see what the Gemara says, but it's a nice suggestion. It's a very nice suggestion. Excuse me. You pay? He pays later much more. It's better to pay in this world money and not pay in Gehenna. Believe me, I mean, weiter. Not believe me, believe Chazal. I wasn't there. Maybe previous Gilgul. Okay, we're getting a little carried away here. I think it's time to finish the Shiur. We're in the 2 dots in Nun Hey Amud Beis in the bottom of the page. Thank you very, very much. See you tomorrow, Hashem, and see you tomorrow night at the Mishmar. Even if you live outside Ramah Aleph, you're welcome to come. You're more than warmly invited. There will be a Mishmar night of a few beautiful shiurim. One shiur will be by myself, starting 9:15, and the topic is going to be why in Chutz La'aretz we don't have Chanukah for 9 days. It's a question with many different answers discussed from the Rishonim, the Achronim. I don't mean 9 days as 9 days of Tisha B'Av. I mean to say, why is there an extra day? Right, in Chutz La'aretz, an extra day of Shavuos, extra day of everything, of Pesach. Why do we say no 9 days? And every night you should light Ram. Why not 9? Chanukah shel Chul. Al style Chul. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.